Yes, good morning and welcome to today's lecture. We're going to pick from last week, what we did last, and we're going to have a fast overview of working with tables. Try to introduce concept of a foreign key. Then we'll jump directly to today's topic, which is a special insert and select structures that will provide foundation on generally manipulation of databases. Okay, manipulation of databases. So in case you join later, can let me know if maybe there's some interference or the voice are not clear or the video are not clear. So just feel free to chat and let me know so that I can help you around. So it's a recorded lecture. Okay, so we'll follow through together. I'll be giving directions where necessary, and if you have a question, you throw in. If the speed is fast, you let me know so that I see how to control the speed. Okay, so let's have a view of basically creating tables with the relevant constraints.
And see, now again, let's revisit the point number 2. The point number 2 says that constant prevents the deletion of a table if there are dependency from another table. So if two tables are related by means of primary key and foreign key, and if you try to delete the parent table, then it won't allow us to delete the parent table because the parent table is referenced by the child table. So that is what the meaning of the sentence 2, that if there are relationship between tables, it prevent the deletion of a table. So let's see the syntax of creating foreign key. Again, guys, like how we added primary key, we can create the primary key while creating the table, or we can modify the table, and then using alter table commands or using alter keywords, we can add the primary key. Same way, we can create the foreign key while creating the table, or once the table has been created, we can go ahead, use the alter commands, and then add a foreign key. So for this, I'll consider two tables, guys. As you can see on my screen, I'm considering, let me increase the font. Yep. So I'm considering two tables here. First is the product table. In product table, prod underscore ID is my primary key. And I'm creating one more table called orders. And order underscore ID is my primary key. But I'm creating a foreign key, so the product ID of my orders tables will be related or will be connected with the product table by means of a foreign key. So let's see how we'll add. So let me copy these tables and we'll open a new window in Management Studio. Increase the font, paste it here. So first of all, I'm creating my parent table, that is the product. So I'll select it and I'll execute it. So command completed successfully. If I'll go ahead just to verification, I'll just refresh this and I'll see, okay, it has been created successfully and all the columns are there. Product ID is a primary key. Now what I'm doing is that I'm creating a child table called orders, and the order tables will be referencing the product ID column, which is the primary key of products table. So this is the primary key of orders table, and this product ID, this second column, will be foreign key, and this will be connected with the product ID of my product table. So in order to do that, we have to write constant explicit keyword. Then we have to provide the name of our constant. It can be any name. You have to decide. All we have to do is that we have to ensure that this constant does not exist in our database. Okay, it has to be unique value. Then we have to provide the foreign key. Okay, which column we want to consider for foreign key. So out of these three columns, our order underscore ID, prod underscore ID, and quantity, we are considering prod underscore ID for our foreign key. So I provided the prod underscore ID in the parenthesis, and then we have to tell, okay, which table we are referencing. There can be hundreds of tables in our database. So if I want to create a foreign key, I need to define the parent table for that, the table which we are referencing. So in our case, we are referencing the product table. So I have selected product here, and then in the parent table, which column we want to reference. So we have to first finalize the table, and in the table, then we have to finalize the key, which we will be referencing. So don't get confused, because I have the same name of the column in the child as well as in the parent table. And I'll execute this command, successfully created. So if I'll go ahead and refresh the tables again, I can see product is ID. And if I'll expand orders, so guys, can you see the icon with this orange color is basically primary key, and this gray color is my foreign key. And you can see this keyword as a prefix FK foreign. So this is how we create while creating the table. And let me show you the syntax and how we can create the foreign key once the table has been created. Yep. So so let's assume I have one table orders one, and I have tables ones product one. So I'll first create these two tables. The tables has been created successfully. Now I want to add a foreign key. What? One, and have tables ones product one. So I'll first create these two tables. The tables has been created successfully. Now I want to add a foreign key.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Created. So I have to define alter table commands. Then I define which table I want to modify. So I want to modify the child table, that is the orders one. I'll define the constant here. I'll define the foreign key again, which column I need to consider. So we are considering again the product underscore ID. So I provide that in the parenthesis. We are referencing the product one since I've renamed the table. So I'm just renaming the table as a product one. The column name is same here. So we have product underscore ID. So if I'll execute this command, this will go ahead and create a foreign key. So I'll refresh the tables of the database. I can see there's a table called orders one, and see these are the two columns, order ID and product ID. And the key is FK underscore product underscore ID one, which we have given. So this is how we create the foreign key. And we will discuss more about foreign key in the module 2 when we'll insert the data. One important part here, guys, is that when we create a foreign key on the child table, and for example, the data of a parent table is referenced in a child table, and if you want to delete the data from the parent table, it will give us an error that the data is already referenced in the child table. Sometimes there are business scenario where you want to go ahead and delete the data from the parent table, which is referenced in your child table. But you cannot do that because it will give you an error. But if we will define our foreign key in such a way that there is a cascade delete, that if I'll delete the data from the parent table, it will also delete the data from the child table, then while creating the key, we need to define this keyword on delete cascade. This is an important point, guys. So by default, your foreign key is having a relation of restrict delete. It means if you try to delete the data from the parent table, which is referenced in child table, it will give an error. The data is referenced, you cannot go ahead and delete it. In order to fix these issues, there might be business scenario when you want to delete the data from parent as well as child. Then while creating the foreign key, we have to provide this keyword on delete cascade. So this is all about foreign key, guys. So we have learned various constant. We discuss about the not null. That not null is used if you want to make our column mandatory, that it is mandatory for us to provide the data while inserting records. We discuss about the unique key. For the unique key, all you have to do is that you just have to write the unique keyword in front of your column. So unique keyword, just define the unique key. We discuss about the primary key and discuss about the difference between unique key and primary key. Unique key may allow null keywords, but it only allows for one single row, because the moment we will try to add null key in 2 rows, it violates the constraint of uniqueness, because uniqueness defines that no two rows can have the same value for the column, but primary key won't allow null values. Second thing is that a table can have more than one unique key, but there will be only one and one primary key in a table. Then we discuss about foreign key. In foreign key, we can create a relationship between two tables by means of primary key and foreign key. The tables which we are going to reference is called as a parent table, and the table in which we will create a foreign key is called as my child table. I hope you all understand the various constants. And check again, specify a condition that must be satisfied by all row in a table. So again, these are the various examples. So if you'll see in the first example, they have created an employee table, and while creating the table, we are providing the keyword primary key. So we are creating the primary key while creating the table. But in the second example, we are adding the constraint to an existing table. We've already seen through the example or the key, the syntax. So you have to write alter table, name of the table in which we want to add the constraint. We have to provide the constraint by using add keyword. So we are adding add constraint. Name of the constraint is mandatory if we are adding the constraint to an existing table. What kind of constraint we are adding? So this keyword, for example, here, if I'll add foreign key, then it will add a foreign key constraint. If I'll add a unique key, then it will add a unique key constraint. So as of now, we are creating a primary key constraint. Then I have to explicitly define what kind of constraint I am adding to existing table. And in the last, as you can see, it is not only we can create a constraint to an existing table, but we can remove the constraint from an existing table. As you can see, the syntax is straightforward. You have to write the keyword alter table, and then we have the name of the table followed by the keywords drop, constraint, and then which constraint we want to delete. So guys, it is very important that when you are creating or adding a constraint, you should give a meaningful name to it, so that it will be easy for you to understand what is the name of the constraint. So if you want to drop that constraint, it comes handy because we have to provide the name of the constraint which we want to delete. So I hope we are clear with the constants, various constants we have discussed: not null, unique, primary key, foreign key, and check. We have seen that we can create those constants while creating the tables, or we can add to the existing tables. And not only we can add, but we can drop the constant from the existing tables. The last topic for this module is view. As you can see, a view is a named derived virtual table. A view takes the output of a query and treat it as a table. So view basically, it takes the, just focus on this line, it takes the output of a query and treat it as a table, but it is not a table, it acts as a virtual table. So we can create a view from a single table, or we can create a view from multiple tables. So I'll show you how we create the views from multiple tables in module 3 when we'll discuss about the joins. So before creating views from multiple tables, we first need to understand what join is and how we can join more than 2 tables. So as of now, I will
Hello, good morning. What the demonstration was all about is foreign key. So if you look at what is being displayed on the screen, that is, hope you can be able to see it clearly. We have a table called orders. order 1, orders 1. And we are adding a primary key, and we're using the keyword alter, okay, to add the primary key to that table in form of a foreign key to enhance the relationship between table orders and table product. So adding a foreign key will take different syntax. Adding a foreign key will take different syntax, depending on the type of server or database management system that you're using. So the syntax used here is for MySQL database server. Okay, so you say add constraint foreign key, abbreviated as FK, underscore product underscore IDL. Now, that particular keyword, FK underscore product underscore IDL 1, is basically a name that is used to specify the relationship we are creating here. Okay, so we can call it the relationship name. If you are presenting an ER diagram or an entity relationship diagram, then FK-product-IDL1 should have been the relationship name between orders 1 entity and product 1 entity. Okay, so the foreign key we're adding here is called product, or is called prod underscore ID, and it is referencing a column in product 1 table with the same name. Note that those two names can be different. Note that those two names can be different. The name being referenced in product 1 table and the name in orders 1 table, those columns can have different names. There'll be no error on that, because the keyword there references will be able to take care of that. The keyword there references will be able to take care of that. Okay, so basically that is what I was trying to play on that particular clip, because most of nobody was online. Okay, so I was just trying to record a clip for that similar purpose. Okay, so once again, good morning for those who are there. There is Hussein and Linus. I hope you have your servers and installed. Okay, so that is one example of how you interact with the foreign key and the primary key. That relationship is very important for us. Are we together? Let me know if you are there. Are we together? Now, so what I wanted to also view or do a review on is insert and select. Okay, insert and select statements. Very, very important. We had done the previous classes how to select data and how to insert data into a table. Okay, how to do the selection and how to do the insertion into a table. The syntax generally is insert into, just allow me to share a lecture there. Just allow me to share the lecture there. Yeah, now picking from the content that I shared last week on specific selection from a table. Okay, so I'll share the link to that video. Then you can watch later on how to work with the foreign keys in deeper details and more other examples on what we're going to do. Okay. So now, once you create your table, you define your constraints very well. You have your foreign keys, you have your primary keys, you have your check constraints all taken care of. Then the next item should have been you insert data into that particular database. And our previous classes, we did agree that for you to do an insertion, then the data types that you used while defining your attributes or defining your columns must be well taken care of. So if you defined a variable character, then that must be in quotation, either double quotes or single quotes, whichever you choose to work with. Okay. If it is an integer, then it can be let open. You don't need to have the quotations. Okay. If it is a date, the treatment is similar to variable character. Okay, the treatment is similar to variable character. Okay, so that's the insertion. Now, select is very important because it's what allows you to pick data from a database. Okay, is what allows you to pick data from a database. Now, how do we do the selection? We had done the previous example shared with you on how to do selection of specific content within the table. Okay. So there is a very important clause we call the where clause. Okay, we call the where clause. So that one will help you specify exactly what you want to select. Okay. So if you look at the statement provided here, we are picking specific columns from a table. Okay. We are picking the first name, which is an attribute to our table. We are picking the last name, and we are picking them from employee data table. We're picking them from employee data table with a condition of the first name must be John. The first name must be John. Okay, and you check how the quotations have been made. It's because it was defined as a variable character. It is because it was defined as a variable character. So the expectation from that query is this set of outcome here based on the table that we had created or the table that is existing in the database. So a similar approach can also be provided here in example 2. So I can call that example 2, example 1. So a similar approach can also be used in example 2 to pick specific attributes from a database table with specific condition or title. With specific condition or title. So this the where clause can also accommodate conditions with logical and relational operators. When I talk about logical and relational operator, I'm sure you remember that we had the equal sign, we had the not equal to sign, we had and, we had or, okay? So the where clause can also accommodate these operators, okay? And the most important thing is that the expression will always remain the same, okay? The expression will always remain the same. So that's the output depending on the type of data or that we had in our database. The keyword here is this, programmer. That's the keyword there. So when you use an integer data, you don't need the quotation. Okay, I think I'd mentioned that when you use an integer data, you don't need the quotations. So if the operators that I was talking about, the logical and relational operators can also be used together with the where condition. Examples is here how you use that, where age is greater than 32. So all these are content that are being picked from a table that was previously created in the lecture notes. So if you check the previous content that I had shared, then the table employee data exists in that particular lecture note. A point to note also is that you can also do mathematics or do mathematical expressions here. You can say, for instance, where salary is greater than maybe 120,000 times 2, or you can reference a given column from the database. If that column is allows for mathematical computation, you can, where, for instance, we want to do pay as you earn calculations from a set of employees. Okay, so there's the pay as you earn is based on the certain amount of money you earn. Okay, is not charged for at a random rate or at a flat rate. Okay, so if that is the scenario, then before we can compute the pay, then we must be able to compare either your basic salary or gross salary with certain set of criteria that has been provided. So we check if your salary is within that particular bracket, then your pay as you earn will be a certain amount of money. So you can include a computational or a mathematical calculation together with those with the select statement and the where clause. So there are a set of examples here that you can try through. Anybody who can provide us with an SQL statement for question 5. Anybody who can? Okay. Anybody who can provide us with a solution to that? I've made all of you the presenter. You can, you have the ability to share your screen and give us the solution to question number 5. Any attempt? Any attempt? No attempt. Okay, let's move on then. So you can use what we call, if you want to answer such a question, then you can use what we call order by. You can use what we call order by statement. So like what I've just provided on the screen there. So last name followed by the first name. So in SQL programming, there's what we call a clause, okay? And then there are what we call the query statements. Query statements. So a clause is basically supposed to be used together with a query statement or a query command to perform specific tasks that are secondary, okay? That are secondary. So like for instance, if you say order by, if you say where is also a clause. If you say where, what you're doing is you performing a secondary task to what the original command has done. So like if you're doing a select with a where, the select will do the selection, which is the primary role, or the key role, and then okay, now I realized that there was some response on the chat there. I'm not able to see the chat because I've expanded my screen to full view so that I can be able to type and be able to mark the presentation with the marker. So I'm not able to see the chat. So you just better use the voice so that I'll be able to know that somebody's speaking. Otherwise, I'll not be able to know that you are texted or you had sent a chat. Okay, so I'm saying that you can use order by to redefine your presentation. Okay, you can use order by to refine your presentation, and the command is I've pasted the syntax here. Order by column 1, column 2, column 3. It's can move as many times as possible. You can also add additional reorganization keywords like ascending order or descending order, just the same way it's provided for here. Okay, just the same way it's provided for here. Okay, so you can add these words, okay, just to organize it in a given order once again. But the order by will take default the way the columns are following one another. Okay, so take note of that. There's a clause and there's the command. So the clauses are supposed to be working on the secondary item, so secondary task to the primary task that is there. Okay, so the assignments, I'll post some of them. You can always try them on your own. So I was changing my network. I was changing my source of connectivity to a different one. Okay. So this one I'd shared with you last week using operators such as like, how you do a select with the specific matching. Okay, either letter or a specific symbol within the database. So I'd shared this content with you last week, unless otherwise. Okay, so if you're using like, that is one of the syntax. You like will take different formats, so we will not be able to exhaust them. It will take different formats. Now that is one of the syntax to pick on content that has letter J as the initial or the first letter, has a letter J as the initial or the first letter. So you will pick anything of that particular frame. Okay, so you can also pick the last letter. You can also decide to use a like to pick maybe the first two letters in a particular statement or a particular entry to the database. Okay, so what you have to ensure is the percentage sign is part and parcel of that syntax. Okay, the percentage sign is part and parcel of that syntax. Okay, so more examples you can be able to see there. I'm sure you can be able to see my screen. More examples on how to use pattern matching in select statements. So that will provide the output that is mentioned here. So you're picking the word senior. Similar to this. Similar to that. A towards the end. Okay. A towards the end. So like operator is a similar operator to the other operators that I mentioned before. It's not a clause. It's an operator in a structured query language. Okay. So logical operators that I was talked about, examples are provided here on how you can put up with the operators. Now, what you need to understand basically is the way they are being expressed. Remember, in other programming languages, this content sometimes cannot be used like this. Okay. In other programming languages, those words will not be used like that. You'll have to go for the symbol to be able to use those particular words in your piece of code or in programming. Okay, but in SQL, you can use them the way they are. Okay, you can use them the way they are. So this one will directly translate to that range of 70,000 to 90,000. Okay, it's just the same way the English would speak it out. What you just need to ensure is that the column name here is mentioned twice. You don't mention salary less than, greater than 7,000 and less than 9,000. You have to mention the keyword twice. Okay, you have to mention the keyword twice. So that is if you are, want to work with the AND to specify a range of a selection within a table in a database. Okay, so the AND, the OR, and the NOT will be used in the same manner. Okay, be used in the same manner. So look at how the OR is used. If I'm fast and maybe you are taking notes, then you let me know so that I reduce my speed of scrolling the document. Or if I'm slow, you also let me know so that I enhance my speed. Okay, so the OR is also applicable in a similar manner. You're picking the first name from a table called employee data, and your first name, or the last name rather, should have an S. Or should have an A as the initial letters. Okay, so you can see how we brought the like operator together with another operator, or to provide a more open type of a command, so that it allows a selection of more and more content from the database. So we use an OR if that particular data set is either not properly filtered, okay, not properly filtered, or the data set is still in what we call the big data form. Okay, big data is a set of data that really has not been organized in a very structured way. Okay, therefore sometimes querying it with SQL becomes a bit of a problem. So in such a scenario, we employ the OR to open up the search scope. Okay, that's the same thing that will happen with when you're doing information retrieval from Google or these all search engines. Okay, they use the OR so that they can give more choices based on your search query. If it is the AND, then almost every time you will be doing a search online, will be giving you table page not found or something of that nature. Okay, because AND is too specific. Okay, AND is too specific. So OR allows for a wider perspective of how the query is going to be processed. Okay, so OR again together with an AND. Okay, so you're trying to limit the scope a bit. While using the OR, you also bring on board the AND to try and limit the scope. What you really need to understand or really need to get note of is how the brackets are arranged. Okay, how the brackets are arranged. Very, very important. Okay, how do we enclose the commands so that when the query processing is being done, then the query processor is able to know this is the end of this command, or this is the end of this clause, and picking on a different clause or an operator, so that we don't confuse the interpretation. So that's supposed to be the outcome for that. The note will take that particular format. Okay, so you join it together with another operator. You can do not like, meaning the whole of that sentence or that piece of characters that appear there is not required anywhere. Okay, so while you're doing the selection of whatever set of data that is issued there, for instance, we're doing first name, we're doing L name, and we're doing title from employee data, then what we are saying is that the word programmer should not appear anywhere. Okay, so that is why if you check down here, the title has nothing to do with the programmer, despite the table that we are picking from, employee data, had that particular title as part of the entries that were in that table. But because we decided not to like, then it will not be able to pick that completely. It will not be able to pick that completely. Okay, so more example down here. An and expressing together with the greater than signs. So set of assignments there. So you can give me the query for number 4. And number 1. You can share. You can just type. I'll be able to check from the chat. Query for number 1 and number 4. I'll be able to check from the chat. I'm waiting for Muni, Muinde, Sain, Denver. I'm only seeing from Justin Rocky. The others, are they part of the class, or they joined and left? They joined and left physically. Okay, we can move on. I'll assume that they are not part of the class. Now, okay, so looking at what Justin has shared, the only issue is the like for the age, okay? Or the like for the age. I know why you're saying the age like 30. And of course, we are talking about 32. Then probably the best you should be able to use, the best you should be able to use is an arithmetic operator, okay? Would be more preferable compared to the like, okay? So because we are talking about an exact value, probably the best operator you should use is equal, okay? Equal. So our equal in SQL is basically our equal in SQL is basically the normal equal in mathematics that you will use, okay? So it's the same as this, okay? So you better use that for the age because we are talking about an exact value. We are talking about an exact value, 32. All employees who are 32 years, okay? Or 32 years. Yes, good. So we can proceed. The rest you can be able to try at some point. I'll avail this content online. Then you can always try those questions. I prefer or I advise you always try them practically using an SQL server of your own choice. If you've not downloaded one and you still need maybe assistance on that, you let me know so that I can either share a link to help you download one, or I can allow you use my my Oracle Express platform to do programming practice through Oracle Academy. We can check on that. So additional clauses that you can be able to use, or operators together with the select statement, include between operators. So remember, most of these commands, there are so many tiny commands that are within them that we cannot exploit all of them at the same time. We cannot exploit all of them at the same time. We'll just roughly talk about the constantly used ones. Then others will come in. If there's a problem, you're developing a project and you move through your project, you realize there's a special query that you need, and then you can also you can either search on it or and you'll be able to get a solution for that. But we cannot say that we'll capture everything in SQL. We'll just pick on the profound one, or the ones that are frequently used. You check what I've just mentioned, the equal sign. See how it has been used there, where the title is equals to system administrator, web admin, and so on and so on. We're still using the or. So that's exact. Okay, that's an exact selection. There's no choice for the domain for selection has no room for either here or there. Okay, so it's either web designer or system admin, and you can see the outcome of that particular query. You can see the outcome of that particular query. Very, very important. Okay, so that is if you're using the equal to, there is also operator not equal to, and so on and so on. So you'll get to use them as the development process moves by. And also, maybe I'll also take this time to if maybe it has not communicated, it has not been communicated, take this time, because maybe you have a lot of time. Begin developing your projects. Okay, develop working on your projects. Learn a new language. Okay, go and learn VB.NET on your own. Learn Python on your own. Okay, develop your projects now, because I'm sure you have a lot of time for you, so that you implement this knowledge on databases. This is enough for you to implement your project backend. Then what you need to look for is which language do you use to implement your front end of your design or your project. So check how the in is being used here. It is similar to the query that we just studied above there, that is using the equal sign and the or. Okay. So basically, you're saying where the title should be in either of the two. The comma in between web designer and system administrator is treated as or. Okay. The comma in between web designer and system administrator is treated as or. Okay, so it will give almost the same thing. It will give, not almost, it will give exactly the same output for that query that we ran up there. So you can see that in will perform the same thing that equal and or will perform. That's why I'm saying so much of the operators. It's the problem that you're facing in your development of a software or application that will judge which operator best fit what you want to do. Otherwise, there's so many of these operators that exist. So, like all other programming languages, the note is negation. Okay, the note is negation. So basically, when you see not in, the expectation is that it will do the opposite. Okay, so if you're talking about not in programmer or what we're going to put programmer, comma, marketing executive, then you know it will do the opposite. It will pick any other thing that is not found in the condition. Okay, so it's a negation. It will always do the reverse. It will always do the reverse. So you can just check the query that is provided for there. Check the query that is provided for there. So we are saying not in programmer or marketing executive. So this is the display of all the other content that is not found in that set of conditions that we've provided there. Okay, so it will display everything, any other thing that is not displayed there. So in case you want to use between, it's the same as you're doing the less than or equals to and greater than or equals to. Okay, so you can always choose which command will prefer your situation, the type of implementation that you're doing, which command is going to be best fitted for that particular process. Okay, is it an between command? Is it age greater than or equal to, less than or equal to? And remember, if you bring on not, then definitely it will negate the whole operator and it will do the opposite. Negate the operator and it will do the opposite. Okay. Yes. Any question? Any question? So that is a set of operators that will work with the select. A set of operators that will work with the select. So is the database designer or is the database developer that will dictate how the outcome of a query will look like, depending on how the commands were programmed or how you program your commands for the specific role. So I've mentioned of just mentioned not between, what it will be able to do. So that's the outcome of not between. So have a look at command in example 4. Okay. So it's basically filtering from two perspectives and is using an AND operator to join the two different levels of filtering. That is not in and not between. Okay. And I've mentioned before that when you use an AND operator, you limit the search domain. The domain from which the results for that particular query can be fetched from is extremely limited. So if you add with the negation note, then that query probably, if the data within the database is not too large enough, that query is likely to return a null record, okay, because of the way it has been expressed. Not and together in one SQL command limits the search domain extremely to almost zero, unless the set of data is big enough. If we were doing data structures for computer science students, then we would calculate the possibility of getting a null record if the query looks like that. Okay, possibility of getting a null record if the query is presented in that manner. Okay. Then the last item I wanted to look at about select before we move to maybe ordering. Ordering, I'll let it for you. I'll just mention the commands that a few commands that you can use for that. I mentioned one already, order by. Okay, the item I want us to maybe just provide a view, an overview, because you might need it at some point. You might need it at some point. Is how to use select to do an insertion. Okay, so you're picking data from one point and then you are putting into another point. Okay, so this is the command, this is the syntax, this is the syntax. So you insert the columns to the relevant table. Okay, just the same way we do insert. And you check the brackets or the parentheses. Where are they? How do they behave? Okay. But then you select the columns from a different table. You select the columns from a different table. So you are picking from table 1 and putting in table 2, using as insert and a select at the same time. Such a query will prove very, very important when you are handling triggers. Okay, triggers are basically a set of statements that are supposed to execute themselves without the human intervention. That's a similar concept that has mutated and is currently referred to as smart contracts in blockchain technology. Okay, that's a concept that I'm sure, being in IT, you know what a blockchain is, or you've heard of it. That's basically a database that has now been expanded in terms of access and in terms of availability. Okay, so the concept of trigger has been mutated and escalated to a level of what we call smart contracts. Okay, so these are pieces of commands that are supposed to execute themselves. Okay, now in blockchain technology, now we bring on board other concepts like issues of sensors, issues of artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. So that, for instance, if within a supply chain, there are measures to be taken, maybe in a weighing bridge or in a weighing scale somewhere of a given truck, that can be taken automatically and recorded, okay, on the database. So once the recording is done, maybe payment should be made. So a smart contract, or a trigger in this case, should be able to, we call it fire, should be able to execute so that that event can be able to take place. So that's the same thing here. So if we are working with triggers, then it is almost mandatory to have what we call backup content. Okay, so that if an update is done, then we pick what has been done from that side and insert into another table for backup purposes, because these are things that happen automatically. And given the fact that they happen automatically, then there has to be a backup for that particular record, so that if the primary record goes down, we can be able to refer to the secondary record or the backup record to be able to do that. So that is how the insert meets the select to be able to achieve such kind of operations. So you pick from this table and put on the other table. That's the syntax of how you will be able to achieve that. Insert into, then mention the table name, and of course the columns. What you need to take care of is that the data types of these columns must be the same. Table 2, column 1, table 1, column 1 must have the same data type. If they were variable character, it has to be the same. If they were integers or dates, it has to be the same. If the data type is not the same, then that particular command will not be able to go through. Okay, so you need to take charge of that while you're working with insert and select in the same query. Okay, so that's very important with the automation that is currently going on or currently taking place.
What did you say is the condition?
Yes?
The condition. What will be the condition?
For the insert select command.
Yeah.
Now the condition here, will only be directing what you want to pick from table 1. Okay, so maybe you want to pick people's name, for instance, whose phone number is specific to this, or whose salary scale is this, and then insert to the other table 2. So it's basically guiding what you want to pick from table 1. And remember, it is always very important that if you are not picking everything or you're not selecting everything from a database or a table, then you add the where condition. Otherwise, if you're picking everything, you don't need the where condition. If you're picking maybe all columns in table 1 and putting them in table 2, you don't need a where condition for that case. So I'd mentioned order by. So there's something I wanted to mention maybe before we can. Just allow me to share screen here so that it will be able to help you moving forward. Now, so maybe so that I don't forget, maybe explaining this. Now, we've been working with what we call WAMP. Okay, we've been working with WAMP, WAMP. Windows, MySQL, Apache, and PHP. So PHP is the probably the front-end language for developing the system. That is, if you're working with WAMP as your stack, database stack. Now, so this is the graphical part of that database. Okay, it's called phpMyAdmin. So if you go and click on your WAMP icon, execute it the way you execute other programs, then you select the icon from the icon directory. That is where you normally check on your internet connectivity. The icon will always appear there once you run the WAMP, once you run the software. Okay, so if you just click on it, you will be able to see a menu that has quite a number of things, showing the WAMP version also. It will show whether it is WAMP server version 2.5, 2.0, 2.8, and so on and so forth. And previously we were looking for MySQL, then we go to MySQL console, which I explained how to work with it to be able to interact with the database, create table, and so on and so forth. Now, so this is the graphical user interface part of it. Okay, this is how it will appear. So on the far left, those are all the databases that exist in that my laptop. On the far left, on the far right is basically information regarding the database server. So it will tell you the server name, the protocol that is running, okay, the IP. So of course, you know the localhost IP, I'm sure from your CCNA classes. The web server, it will tell you what it's running. That web server is what's supposed to be helping us connect from the database end to the front end, so that if you submit information from the front end using a form, then you can be able to communicate with the database. So it's supposed to be the work of the web server to do that. In our case, it is called Apache. Then, of course, phpMyAdmin, the versions of everything provided there. Now, so there's that link, okay, that provides you with the ability to, it has databases. If you click on databases, it will allow you to create a database here graphically, okay. If you click on MySQL or SQL, not MySQL, if you click on SQL, it will be able to allow you create or write your commands from this particular point. Okay? So you can write your commands from this particular point. When you're done, you click go. So this white space here is similar to the command line that we are working with. Okay, it is the command line that we are working with, the black one. So this is the same thing here. So you can as well do your programming from here, moving forward. Now, then there is also status, of course, users. You can create users if you like. You can export your content. Very, very important, especially for you guys when you do your projects in semester 4. Will require you that you export your SQL database, okay, so that we can be able to either run it on a different machine and see the outcome, or just ensure that your structure or your system is portable. You can move with it from one point to another. Import, you can import the content. Of course, if you export, then the time you want to run it, you'll do an import, the opposite of that. Then there's quite a number of other things that you learn as you move forward. But the most important thing is that your databases are always here. So if you create them through the command line, this is how you come and check them. How do you access phpMyAdmin? Once you click on your database, once you activate your WAMP, check on the icons menu. You'll be able to see the icon for WAMP. Click on it. It will give you a menu that will, among other things, show phpMyAdmin. If you click on it, it will open on the browser and be able to show what I'm trying to share with you here. Okay, so you'll always find your content from there. So your databases will always be this side. So you can always decide if you want to program, you can come and program on this interface here. Okay, so you can use your navigation skills just if you access that and be able to just see how databases appear there, and of course, how else can you use them. Now, so the side that you put your front-end files, the side that will accommodate your front-end files is called the local host. Okay, it's called the local host. Maybe I can just share that screen. It's called the local host. Localhost will pick on your files. Okay, mine is not showing the exact home page because there's a number of files that I've added there. Some of them which are not properly do not have proper directory, so that's why it's jumping directly to that. Okay, so this is where you put all your files. This is where you put all your files. You can see that I have a number of systems there that are supposed to be opening through the browser. Okay, so how do you access this? Once you install your WAMP server, then you access through your root folder. That is maybe root C or directory C and so on. You look for www folder, and then you paste your content there. So from there, that content will be able to show on the browser. I'm sure what I'm explaining maybe has been explained by in web development one, because you need to do some PHP, not PHP, but some HTML and CSS development. Then you, the best way to do that is actually to have your files in a local host, not saved as an HTML on the desktop. The best one is have your files in a folder, place them in the www directory in your localhost, then access them through a WAMP server, so that the two classes can move together. That is development one, and of course, database design and development. So if you click some of these, they should be able to open. Some of them here will not be able to open because the database are not have not imported the database. These are basically content from students who are who have finished semester 4. Okay. Yes, so that's how you navigate the WAMP server. That's how you navigate the WAMP server for you to be able to make good use of it. I'll also encourage you to explore other database systems. I've mentioned Mongo. Mongo is free, but you can check if you can be able to download it and make good use of it. Okay. So yes, so unless somebody has a question, when we meet next week, I'll begin working on so we'll still do selection, but now we'll do a selection maybe from 1 or 2 tables. Remember, what we've been doing before is only a single table, so we'll try and do maybe from 1 or 2 tables and see if we can select from more than 2 tables and so on and so forth. Then from there we can jump into transaction and triggers. and see what we can be able to do at that point. Yes, unless somebody has a question, I'll post the notes. You can have a look at them. I'll also post the link to maybe the video. You can have you can watch and see what is there. So unless somebody has a question. Yes, I saw the chat. I'd mentioned earlier that when the lecture is on, I don't read the chats because I normally use full screen view to allow me navigate the presentation. So I don't normally read. So I can see somebody, Denver was asking. Now, project is something that is supposed to, among other things, test the creativity out of you as a student from what you've been learning through. Okay, so it's something that should be as broad as possible, something that should as broad as possible, but that you can achieve within the time that is given. Don't go for a project that goes for a whole year. Okay, so this is the time you think of your proposal. What do you want to develop? Okay, you can do it even in groups, but now if you're doing it in groups, it has to be something substantive that is group worth. Okay, something that is group worth. But now I encourage you, project is something broad. Go for something that is unique, something that you can make good use even when you go outside there. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a web page because you have been taught SQL and HTML and CSS. It doesn't have to be that. Learn something new if you can, and develop something out of that. You can learn mobile apps development and come up with something out of that. Yes, so if there's no any other question, let's agree that next time you come on time. By 8, nobody was around. I was wondering. So I was just playing a video to record maybe a few things that can help you. So let's agree next time we'll be on time. And yeah. So if there's no question, a reminder, some of you did not go back and click on the exams that you did, electronics and structured programming, I think so, and maybe database, I think. No, electronics is not for you guys. That was for semester. Yeah, it's you guys who did electronics previously. Yeah, so electronics, database, and programming. Some of you have not clicked up to date. So that means that I am not in a position to see your marks. It is not that you click, then you do exams again. It's just you go and click. It will tell you, of course, the quiz is closed, but that single click is able to reactivate that process so that the system can be able to move that score from the cache memory to the main memory so that I can be able to see it from my end. It can be pushed to the server. That's the essence of the clicking that I was talking about. So if you know of your friends, you have a WhatsApp group, those people do not come back for the semester, maybe deferred their studies, but did those exams, to kindly do that so that it will help me moving forward to try and put those things right. Yeah, so if there's a question, if no question, I think I'll end today's session there. Unless there's a question. Yeah, so we are free to exit. Let's meet next week. So you can visit the ZDS portals maybe for the notes and a few other things that you'll find there.